There are certain points in your life where you will have just made a decision that will haunt you forever, and you instantly know it. I am currently living through one of these moments, but amplified beyond belief. It is crazy that something as simple as picking up a piece of metal could scar you physically and mentally forever. Let's backtrack a few days. I've worked as an independent construction worker for nearly 3 years, but I'd never built a damn thing out in the country before last Saturday. The job had already been started. The framework was already erected. I was to join the team to see the rest through. The job site was hellish, about 30 miles from anything that could be considered a town. Only things close was a small community hospital at the end of a main street, peppered by small businesses about 8 miles out. The job site was right in front of a swamp, so it was buggy as hell, and the area of Florida it resides in is a, well, humid shithole. I arrived around 10 a.m. on Saturday, but everyone else had been there about 2 hours prior. Just a little communication mix-up, but it obviously made a bad impression. I think this is the reason the foreman told me to canvass the property for trash, an incredibly tedious job when the property is 9 acres in total, and included a few woody areas. But I knew my place and obliged. I hopped on one of the golf carts and headed off. For 45 minutes, I drove up and down the property picking up anything that could be considered trash and throwing it in a bag. Finally, towards the end, I had to venture into the woods. I was pissed at myself for not bringing an extra jacket. A hoodie, jeans, hat, and boots were not enough to prepare me for just how buggy the area in front of the swamp was. I thought it was pretty damn weird, too. The temperature had cooled a bit, so the blanket of mosquitoes, flies, and gnats that laid in front of me didn't make a ton of sense. I tightened the hoodie over my head and hat and got to work. You'd be surprised at how much human trash can exist in supposed remote areas. I don't know exactly what was on that land before, but it looked like during the 40s and 60s this swamp had been used as a party area for teens. Vintage trash strewn all throughout taunted me, knowing that every time I bent over to grab something, I risked a mouthful of bugs. Things were going well until I spotted it beneath a fallen tree, the faint glint of something metal. After heaving the dead tree aside, I stood puzzled. A book-sized piece of polished steel lay deep in the mud. I pulled it out and noticed something engraved on it. Honestly, it looked far newer than the rest of the trash in the area. It could have actually passed as an engraved plaque from things remembered. The engraving was odd. Then and now I knew I was seeing letters that we see every day, but looking at them and looking back, they seemed almost, well, alien. To assuage the headache I was developing, I tried sounding out the words out loud. Big fucking mistake. Truthfully, I can't remember the sounds that exited my mouth in that moment, but I do remember the steel block turning fucking molten and the shriek of pain that followed, hand literally bubbling. I flew back to the job site, showed the foreman, who then had someone take my car and I to the community hospital. Now, I had never been severely burnt before, but I don't think my body was reacting normally. My hearing came and went, my stomach went into knots, and I kept feeling a rotten taste enter my mouth in waves. The community hospital was actually pretty great. The attendees were extremely kind, and they did everything they could to make the situation better for me. It would have been the best experience I ever had at a hospital, but whatever happened to me clearly wasn't normal. As the doctor was treating my hand, a nurse stood to the right and was trying to talk to me. but I just couldn't focus. All I could do was blankly stare at her, which I regret. As I looked into her eyes, her entire face started to melt. Not in some cartoonish way either. Gruesomely. Her skin fell down her front in clumps. Burnt muscle tissue took its place. I screamed and fell back. The doctor screamed too and then yelled at me. Apparently, I'd almost screwed my hand up even worse by jerking away. When I looked back to the nurse, she was fine. The rest of the hospital visit and the following day went fine. I was told that I needed to stay home for about 2 weeks before my hand would superficially heal up, and about a month before I could attempt any sort of manual work. So I laid around watching TV and using my right hand more than I'd ever before. The strange occurrences didn't return until about 3 a.m. Monday morning. I was yanked away from a rather peaceful dream into a full-blown mental breakdown. I was hyperventilating, my vision was taking on a red tint, and I felt as though the ground below me was trying to devour me. I have an anxiety disorder, so I have Xanax on hand, but when I tried retrieving it, it was like my breakdown intentionally got worse. As I turned the corner into my bathroom, I was met face to face with the nurse from before, her face now completely gone. In its place was a screaming mass of moving muscle. She didn't try to say anything, she just screamed in my face, and when she did, the pain in my hand became unbearable. I tried running for the door, but everything was just too much. I passed out on my living room floor, attempting to escape. About 6 hours later, I woke up on my couch, snuggled up in a blanket. At first, I thought it had all just been some mind-bending nightmare, so I turned on the TV and tried to get lost in a binge of American Pickers. It wasn't until I went to brush my teeth that I saw them. 4 disgusting piles of melted skin strewn about my bathroom floor. My heart began to pound. Was I losing my mind? Maybe my hand was infected and I was in such bad shape I was hallucinating. In a frenzy, I tore away the bandages and nearly fainted once I looked down at my hand. Swollen, pulsating, with a large bloody split in the middle of my palm, from which long, black, leech-like creatures were oozing out of it. Once again, my vision took a red tint. I could barely stand, and I'm pretty sure I was leaking slow-moving vomit from my mouth. I'm sure that's the most legitimate reaction I was having. I limped toward my bedroom, trying my best to not completely collapse, and finally came to my cell phone, which I had left on my dresser. The second my right hand touched the phone, it was like a switch had been flipped. My vision was normal. My body suddenly straightened up, and when I looked down at my left hand, it was fine. Well, it was still burnt, but I didn't have monstrosities trying to escape a bloody cavern in my palm. I debated my next move. I was crying by then, more frustrated than anything. I knew I needed to call someone. But what? Tell them what? I was seeing... Be labeled crazy? Get sent to a facility that would drown me in bills? I angrily threw my phone at the rocking chair in the corner, jumped into bed, and aggressively shut my eyes. Maybe I just needed some serious sleep. I nearly cried tears of joy when I woke up. Everything was fine. I wasn't having some kind of attack. My body felt as normal as it could be, and I thought that it was all over. I peeked my head out from under the covers, looked towards my bedside digital clock. I audibly gasped. It was now Tuesday, around noon. I had slept for nearly 24 hours. But if that was what I needed, I was glad I got it. I absent-mindedly got up, grabbed my phone, and started responding to texts that I'd ignored as I walked around my house. I was telling my sister that no, I hadn't gone missing when I made it to the entrance of my living room and saw a glimpse of my surroundings. My phone hit the floor about a second later. Hung from my ceiling were multiple mutilated human torsos. No limbs or heads, just a few torsos that had been vivisected. Organs and general gore littered the floor. The unmistakable coppery smell came next. I was so completely dumbstruck that I had nearly missed the actual horror that was making its way towards me. Standing about 5'8", with arms nearly the same size as its entire body, made up of the same writhing muscle that the nurse's face had turned into, this faceless beast was coming at me from the other side of the living room. It slapped the torsos out of the way and crushed fallen organs under its feet. I didn't have time to dodge. The creature swung its right arm too fast, and what I can only describe as claws made contact with my upper neck. Pain didn't follow, but absolute adrenaline did. I closed the gap, grabbed onto its body, and pulled back. We both fell to the ground, but the thing took one of the torsos with it. On the ground, the creature was at a disadvantage because of its arm length, so I straddled it, and with everything I had, I started raining down blows. It tried so hard to get out from under me, but I needed to subdue this thing, or it was going to kill me. The only problem was, the blood loss was finally coming into play. The more I hit it, my strength was fading. I needed a way to put it down. Now, ignoring the blood flowing from my neck, I moved my head around frantically, looking for something that could help, and saw that the fallen torso had deposited a rib a few feet away. So I wrapped my right leg around the creature, leaned as far as I could to the left, grabbed the rib bone, which stung my burnt hand. My entire body was starting to feel fuzzy, but still, I brought the rib down as hard as I could into the empty mass of muscle where its face should have been. Then, black. A worried but extremely well-timed 911 call from my sister, multiple blood transfusions, and 9 hours later, I awoke in a hospital bed, surrounded by family. According to police, I had been found bleeding out on my living room floor. My living room was trashed, but nothing was really out of the ordinary. No disemboweled torsos, no inhuman nightmare creature, not even anything missing, just me laying in the middle of my living room. The police told me that they think someone had tried to rob me. I fought back, so they fled, but not before stabbing me in the neck. They asked me if I knew any shifty characters, and I said no, and feigned memory loss with the whole incident. But I know what happened. The scars on my hand, neck, and soul are proof of what I endured was real. I hadn't had any other incidents since then. So maybe it's over for me, but that metal block is still at that site. So I need to warn the other workers there. They will likely call me crazy, so I wanted to write this for all of you before I'm thrown in a loony bin. Maybe one of you will believe me. I don't know exactly what I survived, but I survived. And I want to make sure others do too.